I am your host, Patrick Green. We got a really special show for you guys tonight. We actually are going to have an interview that's going to take up about 99% of the content you're hearing. We have it with the lovely Christopher Smith of Mass Live. But before then, we're gonna talk a little bit of Red Sox and introduce my other lovely co-host, Dave Latham. Dave, say hi to the people.
How's it going, everyone? And just so we get it, Chris's Twitter handle is @Schmitty@MLB. He's a fantastic follow, one of the best writers on the beat.
Yeah, I was just actually going to Google his Twitter handle, so thank you for that, Dave, because I was scrambling. And we also have joining us our other lovely host, Chris Terzine. I'm going to segue here into Red Sox topics real quick before we get to this exquisite interview with Christopher Smith. He's going to cover a lot of prospect coverage. He's going to talk about the rumor mill for the Boston Red Sox and a little bit of information about his career breaking into the industry. So you definitely want to not stop listening right now. You have to suffer through us talking about nonsense for a couple minutes and then you get to the good stuff. But there has been rumors that the Red Sox are interested in both Dave Robertson and Zach Britton, both of whom are obviously high-ticket relievers in the free agent class. I know, Dave, you put a Twitter poll on the @Red Sox Unfiltered account asking if Red Sox fans would be interested in either of them. You want to briefly go through those results and tell me what you actually think about this pursuit and if this makes sense for Boston?
Yeah, so I forget, I didn't have the poll in front of me, but I know the majority voted for interested in just Robertson, I believe. And then it was Robertson and Britton, then neither, then just Britton. So I guess Zach Britton is probably feeling a little heartbroken right now, but I want him to know it's okay, buddy. We, 9% of the voters love you. But no, I've already been on record multiple times of saying that Dave Robertson is up near the top of my Red Sox free agency wish list. Of all these, obviously my number one, but I'd really love to bring Robertson in. I think he's going to be, considerably cheaper than Kimbrel and offer not the same production, but close enough for production that it's definitely worth it. And Britton, I really like as a bounce back candidate. I think now that he's had a whole off season to get healthy. Last year, he was good, but he wasn't Zach Britton. I think he still has that really good pitcher in him somewhere. I just think that last year, coming off, I think it was an Achilles injury, he never really had time to round into form. And I think he's going to be available fairly cheap. So I think he's similar to Andrew Miller in that vein. I think they're good buy low candidates. So I'd definitely be interested in bringing one or both aboard, obviously depending on money.
Yeah, and, the Red Sox are probably most interested in beefing up the bullpen out of any other position besides Nathan Eovaldi's inevitable acquisition, hopefully. That's not inevitable. I don't know why I said it's inevitable. In my heart, it's inevitable. I remember probably around the trade deadline this past season, the Red Sox were heavily connected in trade pursuit for Zach Britton. Obviously, the Yankees got him, and the Red Sox still won the World Series, so who cares? But the Red Sox almost traded for him, and there was a rumor that it was for Michael Chavez. That would have been absolutely awful because Zach Britton was coming. He's obviously been plagued with injuries, but his splitter has lost a lot of its effectiveness. Obviously, he's kind of not a one-pitch pitcher or sinker. Sorry, he's not a one-pitch pitcher, but it definitely is really skewed towards that heavy usage. So I am not as inclined. I'm not as high on Zach Britton, especially because his peripherals have taken a huge hit and he's lost velocity on his pitches. So I think the age and the injuries are starting to wear down on him. David Robertson had a down year, but for some reason I still have confidence. His underlying numbers don't look like they've taken a huge dip. So I would be interested, obviously, in both because they both are buy-ish low candidates who will probably give you the bullpen insurance needed if Craig Kimbrel doesn't come back, which I think signs are pointing that won't be the case because he's demanding a 6-year contract. But yeah, so
I just pulled it up. I don't like his whip. Just out of all the stats, I don't like that. I just happen to be looking at whip. But whip, so the thing that bothered me the most about the Red Sox bullpen was the fact that they gave up walks and hits all the time. And adding in another guy that gives us walks and hits all the time, that would just add to my anger. I just happen to look at whip. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing about whip for me is it's skewed because it equates a single at the same amount as a home run, or a double the same amount as a home run.
Definitely.
That's
but
the problem with it.
I mean, his FIP isn't really wonderful.
Talking about Robertson?
No, Britton. Were we talking about Robertson? This is a nightmare. What are we doing here?
In my mind, we were talking about Robertson. But but my whip conversation stands. My stance on whip.
Well, yeah, that would change. I get you. I feel you, though. I feel you. I'm there with you. I understand that. Cool. But it's like any stat. All stats need to be used in context with other stats to make an argument.
Some are stronger than others. Actually, some are a lot stronger than others, in my mind.
Yes.
It's looking at the right stats, and I don't think whip is a big part of the puzzle, or even a small part. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, David Robertson, 297 FIP. You want to talk about a good FIP? That's a good one. And a 320.
How about base on balls per 9 innings? Do you like that stat?
Walks per 9, yeah. I mean, that goes into FIP.
Walks per 9, yeah, sorry. I said base on balls because I had BB9 in front of me.
I mean, that's literally what it translates to. So, I mean, they're synonymous with each other. And yeah, his walk rate was up comparative to last year, but over his career, it was below his career average. So, David Robertson still looks like a real good pitcher. We just alluded to Craig Kimbrell with the 6-year, I think it was he wants 6 years at minimum. That's his initial asking price. Dave, do you think that's what he's ultimately going to get?
He sure shouldn't. I'm not investing 6 years in a over 30 reliever whose pitches a fastball and relies entirely on velocity when that's almost certainly going to dip in the next 2 to 3 years. So, I mean, it's baseball, so, teams like to go crazy in free agency, especially with hard-throwing relievers and teams that really like to just follow a trend, and the trend is hard-throwing relievers get it done. So there's probably going to be some team that doesn't think very hard and just, sees, well, Kimbrell throw ball hard. He has good numbers. Let's give him whatever it takes to get him here because, we need a big splash in free agency to power us to the future and just basically go 2015 Red Sox with it, and it's going to blow up in their face.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of stuck to this anti-Kimbrell stance for much of the season. Chris, do you have anything to add to the Craig Kimbrell conversation?
No, I just think it's interesting that the reliever market's been kind of on hold right now. All the reports you're hearing are about, the starters and everything, but not relievers. Last year, I think relievers were the first to go, weren't they?
They were the first to go, and they were the only.
They were basically the only thing that went.
Yeah, they were the only thing to go for a reasonable asking price. But I don't know if that's really reflective of what's going to happen because obviously Bryce Harper and Manny Machado are a lot more on the microscope.
Well, it's probably because this year they have to Kimbrell, I assume, sets the market. So I think they pretty much have to wait for Kimbrell. And it's kind of like Harper and Machado also set the market. So you're kind of waiting for them too, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, but I think there's now a more clarification of the roles. There's a difference. There's obviously this divergence between what kind of valuable relievers. I mean, there's obviously people who still are kind of glorified as a ninth inning man, as a Craig Kimbrell is. But there are other guys like David Robertson and Zach Britton, for example, who could be multi-inning arms. Even Andrew Miller, who's not necessarily going to be that ninth inning guy. And I wonder if they are extricable from each other at this point. If you can separate the market for multi-inning guys and non-closer traditional guys, I wonder if that market will separate. But I don't know. That's time. Time will ultimately tell that one. The only other news before we get to this amazing interview is the Red Sox. In terms of they will be visiting the White House. We won't talk much about that. And Alex Cora will attend. And you can read more about that on RedSoxUnfiltered.com. Danny of Red Sox Unfiltered writer, posted an article about that. But yeah, that's it for this introduction. The usual banter that takes up 99-100% of our episodes. So you'll miss our voices, but you will hear Chris. Well, you'll still hear our voices, but Christopher Smith's voice will be paramount here. So yeah, follow him on is it at Smitty on
at Smitty at MLB.
At Smitty on MLB on Twitter. He's a great follow, as Dave illuminated earlier. But yeah, thanks for listening to this intro, and let's get to the interview. So we are here with Mass Live's Christopher Smith. Chris, thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the 32nd episode of the Red Sox Unfiltered Podcast. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so as we said, we got Christopher Smith on the show, and we're going to be asking questions to him. He's obviously one of the best beat reporters the Red Sox have. We'll just get into this thing to start. I want to get a little peripheral information about you. I want to see, to start, how did you break into the baseball reporting industry? And are there any baseball writers you try to emulate your craft after?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, basically I grew up, my favorite sport growing up was baseball. I did play high school football, but, growing up, baseball was my main thing. Watching it, I always call myself a 162 guy. I watched 162 games a year, or at least tried to as a kid. It was funny, like, I'd go to family parties as an 11 or 12-year-old and steal the keys to my father's car, and, I'd be sitting in the car listening to the Red Sox game, and, everybody would be wondering where I was. So, I always, follow the Red Sox. Very passionate growing up about following baseball and the Red Sox. And I I got my master's in newspaper, magazine, and online journalism from Syracuse University. And from there, journalism is a tough thing. You just kind of take whatever job you can get. When you're 12 or 13 or 14, I remember it was funny. My mother gave me a autobiography that I wrote of myself in the 4th grade. It said I want to be a Red Sox writer someday, a Red Sox reporter. At that age, you think, you're only going to do baseball, and maybe even, in high school, I thought, well, baseball's the thing I'm going to do, and that's it. But, I learned quickly, out of college that there's not many jobs, and you've got to take what you can get. And so I ended up going to Missouri right out of college, and was a high school reporter down there for a couple of years, and covered 21 high schools, and did basically it was just me on the high school beat. It was me planning everything, me doing everything, me writing about everything, and that really helped me become a better reporter. And I came back here without a job. I kind of missed my family. And so I just kind of came back without a job, and I was lucky enough to find a job at the time at the Eagle Tribune, which is in North Andover. And at that time they were kind of looking. The job was do anything, some pro sports, high school stuff, whatever. But they were also looking, their Bill Burt, who was there, was becoming the sports editor. And he had done some Red Sox, so he was like, if anybody wants to go to the Red Sox, go to the Red Sox. And I volunteered because, as I said, I always wanted to do baseball. And it was funny, the first time I went to the Red Sox, I tell a lot of people this story, and cut me off if I'm talking too much, because I tend to do that. But
no, I love the story.
So the first time I went to the Red Sox was 2010, opening day. It was Easter. Josh Beckett against CC Sabathia, and I was, really sick. It was Easter. It was an 8:00 game, Sunday night baseball. I threw up a couple times that day, and I was in my bed, I can't believe this is happening. I really want to do this tonight, but I might have to call in sick. And I went anyway. It was like the worst experience because I was just sick the whole night. And my stories were crappy. Everything was crappy. And I was like, I don't even think I want to go back. I think I just want to do, high school sports for the rest of my life after that. And, Bill Burt said to me, go back, do something on Carlos Pena, who's a Haverhill guy. He's from the area, the Merrimack Valley. He's coming in with Tampa Bay. Go try to do a feature story on him. I did that a week later, or a week and a half later, whatever it was, and just kind of fell in love with it from there. And I was going in on days off, to cover the Red Sox. And, at that time I had high school sports that I had to write, but, any opportunity that I got, I went in there. So I was late to, my rehearsal dinner for my wedding because, I was, doing pregame stuff, going in there and getting stories. Any opportunity I could get. It didn't matter if I was getting paid by the Eagle Tribune. They paid me for 40 hours. Well, I'd work an extra 40 hours, covering baseball in addition to what else they wanted me to do. And that led to the job at Mass Live, which has, been awesome. And I've been, allowed to travel and do the beat full time. And, that's been great. But with, the Eagles Tribune, they give me great opportunities too. And, I worked the 2013 World Series and everything, but, now I'm just focused on the Red Sox, and it's been, a great 4 years with Mass Live.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
that's the long enough answer for you.
No, that was a very concise answer. I appreciate that. I mean, that's really that was really good content. I'm gonna have a follow-up question to that. Like, I know you said you broke in the industry, obviously, but how did you manage to work a clubhouse? Like, that first experience when you were told you got to interview these professional athletes, was that nerve-wracking? And, like, as you've obviously been doing this for a while, has that subsided? Have you learned, like, tools to kind of get those interviews?
Yeah, well, at first, it's funny, you walk in, and I remember the first time that I walked in 2010, and I had basically been a high school, beat reporter. I covered, one professional game between, St. Louis Rams and, the Seattle Seahawks at one point when I was in Missouri, but, it wasn't anything where I was trying to get one-on-ones and stuff like that. And I remember walking in 2010, the first thing I see is Josh Beckett, and, in Missouri I had, watched him, and at that point, I was watching the World Series and watching Josh Beckett dominate, and so that was, like, whoa, you're seeing these guys, but, establishing yourself, you've kind of got to show up, show up there often and have them see you, and, talk to them. I think it's important that, you relate to them in other ways than just baseball. Try to figure out, some things that they like other than just baseball. And it's important, they have pregame, which is 3.5 hours before the game. They open the clubhouse. Actually, it's 4 hours before the game since Alex Cora took over. They open the clubhouse at like 3 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game. And so you're there, and, you try to talk to the players, and it doesn't have to be an interview. You try to talk to the players and chat with them about a certain thing. Like if it's, Craig Kimbrell, you talk to them about Alabama football, or if it's about, somebody else, Matt Barnes about UConn women's basketball doing something well. Try to find, or, fly fishing with Rick Porcello. Different things that people have interest in, and that that will help you later on when you want to get a one-on-one story, and they'll open up to you longer and talk to you more. I think all the players on this team were really willing, and even with reporters that just came in and worked a few games with, if it was an intern with the Boston Globe and wanted a one-on-one story, the players were very good this year, and you didn't have to be a well-known reporter in the clubhouse to get a story. But, it is intimidating at first in a way. I remember in 2010, I've told this story before, but, I was interviewing, I had asked Manny Del Carmen for an interview, and Jonathan Papelbon's locker was right near there. And I said to Manny Delgado, oh, you have a minute to talk about somebody, I forget who. It wasn't a story on him, it was a story about somebody else, and he had some quotes from a few other players, and he's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. So we start talking and everything, and Jonathan Papelbon, he didn't know me, and, it was like one of the first times he saw me, and, immediately he goes, who's this big? Oh, he said to, Del Carmen, he said, you can't do this interview, or he said to me, he goes, you can't interview him right now. He goes, he's got to go out and throw with us. And I said, well, he just told me I can interview him, so I'm going to. And so I continued to interview him, and Papelbon, right in the middle of the clubhouse, started yelling to, all the players and all the reporters, who's this hot shot reporter and everything, and trying to embarrass me in a way. And that's just the way that, players do things. I know Dustin Pedroia, in a way, was, he liked to, fool around with reporters, and I didn't know that as much, when I first came in. And so he said a few things to me, and it took me back. And, now, I talk to him, and, you chat with him and stuff, and you talk to him, you ask him about his family and different things, and, it's cool. But to remember about it back in the day, he said something, but he used to do that with all the reporters. So, you just kind of got to get to know them and know them not too personally and not get too close but to also, get to know them on a certain level too.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you had to develop a pretty thick skin over the years to kind of come back from that. But that's really cool. It seems obviously rapport is a big thing. I didn't know Rick Purcell was into fly fishing, so that was a cool tidbit of information too. So.
He is. He's a real fisherman. It's funny, like he was on, I wrote a story a couple of years ago. He was like fly fishing the week before, he got the Cy Young or whatever, and, somebody said to him, oh, here's the Cy Young Award winner or something like that, and he goes, I don't know about that yet. But yeah, so, he's always been into that stuff. He's from New Jersey, and that's like his thing. It's funny because Jason Grimm, the prospect, is really into fishing, and I told him that. He didn't know that Rick Porcello was into that stuff, and, he was like, oh, I'd love to go out on the boat with him. So I told Rick Porcello, and I don't know if they've done it yet, but, I know that the last offseason, Rick Porcello and him hung out a little bit, so, doing Pilates and stuff, so maybe they did. So I don't know, but I try to bring people together.
It sounds like that's your next story, to do a follow up on if Groom and Porcello actually went fishing. Yeah, there you go.
Exactly, right?
So, Chris, obviously you have the opportunity to talk to just about, literally everyone in the Red Sox clubhouse. And I'd imagine there's a lot of different personalities in there. Is there anyone in particular, like, you try to go for like a more out of the box, less generic answer to questions, someone who sort of speaks their mind more than the others? Because I feel like that would be one of the really fun or interesting parts of the job, is finding the right people to get certain answers for a particular story you're working on. Is there anything like that you ever focus on?
Yeah, I think that two of the ones that are actually the most candid are Rick Porcello. He'll give you his views on things. He's obviously given his opinions on, steroids and different things like that. Candid, opinions on that to different people. But, he'll also give you, he's not afraid to say things. He wouldn't be a Belichick type, player. But another one is, it's surprising maybe to some people to hear this because of the relationship that he had with the media last year, but David Price. And I think that David Price has always been that kind of guy, except for last year when he didn't have a good relationship with the media. But, through his years with Tampa Bay and, Detroit, Toronto, and, his first year in Boston, and minus his, minus that second year in Boston, and then this year, getting back to this year, you could ask him anything and he'll give you an honest answer. And, he doesn't care what you ask him. I asked him about the Josh Hader thing after, that Josh Hader thing came out at the All-Star game with, the tweets that he had, the racist and the homophobic tweets and different things. And, I asked him his opinion on that. I asked him about his opt-out clause because I knew that, and that was in either late August or early September, but I knew at that point that with, David, he would give an honest answer to that question, and I knew he wouldn't get upset with that question at that point of the year because, he told me, in his first year with Boston, it was funny, I said to him, I go, I haven't really talked to you too much this year. I kind of wanted to, lay back a little bit and let you be in your first year here in Boston, but, maybe I laid back too much. I'm probably going to talk to you more next year, which never happened, obviously, because he didn't talk to any of us. But, I said, and he told me, he goes, well, anytime I'm an open book. And, I was talking, this season, I said, you told me you were an open book the first year, and you're right, and that's why I didn't hesitate to ask you about your opt-out clause and, certain things. So he's one person that if you were to have a question, about a controversial topic in baseball, him and Rick Purcell, I think, would be the two go-to guys on the team. I'm trying to think who else. I think those two probably the most have most interesting opinions on things.
Who's I'm sure you have to play this a certain way, but who's probably the one that plays most close to the best?
What's that?
Who's the one that probably plays most close to the best, closed off as much, I guess is the best way to put that?
Yeah, so...
Who would make Bill Belichick proud?
Yeah, exactly. Who would make Bill Belichick proud?
So, it's funny, I was actually saying this to my wife, was it to my wife? No, I was out having lunch with a friend today, and I was saying this. For a superstar player, Mookie Betts is, he doesn't say much. And, he could say more, and get away with it. He could have a lot of opinions and baseball's a sport where it's 162 games, and if you want to say things, you can have opinions, and, you want to have a big personality, you can. I'm not saying that he doesn't say anything interesting, but, he's very, he gives basic answers especially when he's in a group. He might be a little bit different. He might give you a little bit more honesty, and I'm not saying honest because he's always honest, I guess you would say, in a group. It's just not. I would say more candid. Maybe he's a little bit more candid, one-on-one before a game. But I think he's probably more reserved than many. And I think Jackie Bradley's the same. If you can get him before a game, he's a little more candid about things. If you get him in a group after the game, he's not going to say much. He's going to kind of, be very careful with everything he says.
Yeah, I think that was really interesting. It sounds like when you're doing this reporting job, you kind of have to be kind of a sociologist / psychologist to try to find the opportune time when these guys are more willing to talk, as you alluded to with Betts and Bradley, about if they're in a group or not. And I think that's really cool. To now kind of take this conversation more into what's going on with the Red Sox, I wanted to know, this is probably what's on most Red Sox fans' mind, actually probably 99% of Red Sox fans' mind. It's about Nathan Eovaldi. He's their obvious big ticket free agent. So I want to know what you've heard on that front. I know the report came out that the Astros and Red Sox are essentially the two finalists or the two most likely to sign him. And I want to know if you think he's going to be back in a Red Sox uniform, and what do you envision his contract will look like?
Yeah, I think it would be, I think with the way he pitched, and it's actually interesting. I think that, when you look at, is he 29 years old or 28, 29 years old? And I think that the two Tommy John surgeries actually go in his favor, or the fact that he just had Tommy John surgery and he had a successful season after Tommy John surgery. You look at guys going in their 30s, and one of the things that you're nervous about is the Tommy John, or that the arm's going to break down in the 30s because they've thrown so many pitches. But in a way, he's already has the Tommy John surgery out of the way, or the second Tommy John surgery out of the way. He had, I think, one in high school. So, I think that, the way that he pitched in the postseason, and, he was exceptional in the postseason, but he was very good during the regular season. When he came over to the Red Sox, he had a sub-4 ERA. He pitched very well. He can either close or, he can either start or close. Obviously, teams are going to look at him more as a starter than a closer, but he can do either. I would envision a 5-year deal. I don't, I really haven't thought about how much per year, but I don't think any contract, I don't think is with Nathan Eovaldi is really going to kill the Red Sox, in terms of money. So I think that that's an important, it's important to sign him. And actually, if you ask Ian Brown of MLB.com, after he threw his second game with the Red Sox, I said to him, I go, they should resign this guy. So I've been on the Nathan Eovaldi train for a while, and I go, and actually I preface that with, I know this is the most, outrageous thing to say at this point, but, or the most, getting ahead of everything. But I really liked his stuff, and the fact that he had already had Tommy John surgery out of the way, and that he was getting better, and that he was throwing, he's the prototypical pitcher of nowadays, throwing, 100 miles per hour and, that kind of force. So I think the Red Sox can get it done, and I think the Red Sox need him. I wrote the other day that they have a very good, group of minor leaguers who could make this bullpen very good in the, coming years, that it actually could be their strength. From Travis Likens and, the Hernandez kid, if they, decide to make him a reliever, and, different guys in, Durbin Feldman, certain guys in the minor leagues that they really can make this a strength. They can make this like a Milwaukee Brewers type bullpen, in my opinion. But so starting pitching isn't, the most important thing anymore. And especially with, the way the bullpens are going. But I think this is an important signing to get him locked up, especially not knowing if you can, re-sign Sale in a year, or if you even want to re-sign Sale in a year, considering, his health issues and, if he's durable going into August and September.
Yeah, and I think you hit on all that. Definitely nowadays, as you mentioned, bullpens are getting bigger roles, more innings. You're getting those multi-inning relievers, which actually Nathan Eovaldi did in the postseason. He did awesome in that role.
So even if he fails, and I don't think he's going to, but if you've got that contract and it doesn't look good after a year, if he starts and he doesn't look good, you could always turn him into a closer or a super reliever type, which is unbelievable how many games I wrote it down the other day. I think it was like 30. I think it was like 30 relief appearances Josh Hader had over, multiple over 3 outs in a game.
Crazy.
So they're doing that more. And there's not many. So there's more relievers that are becoming that super reliever. It's not just the postseason thing. There's guys that can go multiple innings, and that's a guy that you could do that with. So if it'll be like, after a year, you'd be like, oh, the starting thing isn't working out. You want to go in a different direction, bring in another starting pitcher and have him as a guy that goes multiple innings out of the bullpen or as the closer. You could always do that.
Yeah, I think that convergence is especially interesting, especially you look into your division with the Tampa Bay Rays and what they did last year with the 4-man rotation, multi-inning relievers. We'll see maybe eventually in the future if other teams follow and maybe the Red Sox get to that point. But yeah, Nathan Eovaldi has got that versatility where he's proven that he can do it out of the bullpen, do it out of the rotation, and yeah, he's obviously a good weapon.
All right, well, Chris, I'm actually happy to hear you kind of segue, or you mentioned the all arms coming up it through the farm system. I'm really gotten big into the farm system this offseason because there's nothing else to do. You can only write about Craig Kimbrell and Joe Kelly and Nathan Eovaldi so many times. So I want to talk to you about the top 3 pitching arms right now. Obviously, Jay Groom's the best one if he reaches his ceiling, but he's a big question mark. But of the big 3 right now, I'd say they're Darwinzon Hernandez, Tanner Huck, and Brian Mata. So of those 3, which one do you think has the best chance to make it as a starter? Because they've all got great stuff, but they all have those. They might not be major league starters. Which one do you think has the best chance?
I think Hernandez, and it's interesting because he's kind of his stuff is just so good, and it's actually interesting. Peter Gammons had a tweet out there, and he was like, he was talking to some guy, he didn't name him, but some Red Sox minor league coordinator or Red Sox minor league guy, and he was saying that he could be a number 1 or number 2 starter in the big leagues. And I get those other guys to me project, Hook, I like, or Tanner Houck, I like. In Mata, I like too, but, I look at Hernandez as having the highest ceiling in terms of, he's just his pure stuff that he could be a top of the rotation guy. Maybe those other guys are more middle of the rotation guys. With Houck, it's interesting. They last year, they really wanted to make him a 4-seam guy. He was a 2-seamer, threw 2-seamers in college. He had a 2-seamer, nasty slider, that type of thing. And, at Mizzou, and they decided, well, we'll make him a 4-seamer with a curveball. And I don't really understand why they did that, but they did that. And, the curveball works well with the 4-seamer, so I can understand why they did that, but I don't really understand why they didn't, decided to, take his best pitch, the 2-seamer away. He really was not good in the first, 10 or 13 starts that happened. And then they made him a 2-seamer again, and his stats are pretty dominant for the final 10 starts or 13 starts of the year when he was a 2-seamer again. So that's really promising. But you look at somebody like that, and you look at Mata, and, those are potential guys in the bullpen if they don't want to make, if they don't, pan out as starters. Mata just walked too many guys this year, but he's still so young, too. I think he's only 19 and he was at high A Salem, but the walk rate was just, really up there high this year, which is concerning because, you look at somebody like Henry Owens and his walk rate was crazy in the minors. So that's a little concerning, but he was working on some new pitches this year or trying to, focus on certain pitches that weren't, trying to develop pitches better this year so he was working on his pitches that weren't as good this year. And, we'll see, but I think, the highest ceiling's probably Hernandez just because his stuff is so nasty. And we'll see. Peter Gammons is tweeting out that, we could see him in Boston in 2019. And, Peter Gammons knows this stuff pretty well. So, I haven't really seen him pitch. I've seen all the other guys pitch. I haven't seen him pitch. So but from what I've heard about his repertoire, his stuff and, seeing some tweets about him, he has the highest ceiling.
Yeah, I'd agree with that assessment. I'm a little bit higher on Huck than most people are. I haven't seen him pitch. I haven't seen any pitch. All 3 of them are expected to be in Pawtucket either to start the year or Portland to start the year or at least get there very soon thereafter. So I plan on watching a lot of them this year. But yeah, I'm really high on Huck just because once he got back to that 2-seamer, I want to say it was the last 6 or 7 starts, his ERA dropped into the mid-2s and all the peripherals were there too. So I'm a bit higher on him than most, but I agree Hernandez is probably the highest ceiling. But anyway, switching from the starters to the relief.
One more thing on him though, on Tanner is that he's very confident too, and that goes a long way. He actually told the Red Sox that if they picked him before the draft in 2000, what was he picked in 17? He told them if you pick me, he said that if you pick me, I'll be the best pick in the draft. So, you know, he's a confident guy and he believes in himself. And if he's got the right pitches going, you know, I mean, that confidence goes a long way. So,
I didn't know that one, and I like that because you really do need to have that little extra edge to be a starting pitcher. Those guys, like the true aces, they are absolutely insane. And I feel like you kind of need that to, like, go out there and face the best of the best. So I like that. Yeah. That adds Tanner Huck points for me. So, anyway, moving past the starters to the relievers, I think you'd agree that of the guys that are, like, definitely going to be relievers, no chance as a starter, the two big names coming through the farm system are Travis Likens and Durbin Feltman. I think, you know, it's pretty consensus Feltman has the higher ceiling, but which guy do you think is going to have a bigger impact in 2019?
That's a good question. You know, I was on the Lakens train that they should have brought him up in 2018. You know, I was asking, you know, Dombrowski in August if they were going to bring him up. I was also asking Buttrey very early in the year. Obviously, he got traded in the Kinsler, and so those were two guys that I was asking throughout the year to Dombrowski if they would bring up. I can understand why they didn't bring him up in September, because he had some arm issues. But the thing that I like that they did with Lakens was that, you know, I put it down. I tweeted it out a couple, like last week, and I also wrote it in an article. I think like 10 of his last 13 relief outings were of multiple innings. And so I like that, and I like the fact they could make him into a multi-inning relief guy. I think that either one of them could, but I think that we'll probably see Lakens more this year. But, you know, Feltman, I wouldn't rush Feltman as quick as, you know, you know, he was the 100th pick for a reason. I mean, if he's, you know, he still has to develop a little bit. And I have seen him pitch. I was down at Lowell, and his stuff is nasty. He was just dominating. I took a video of him. If you go to YouTube and, you know, click, or put in Durbin Feltman Lowell Mass Live, you can, you know, see it. I mean, his fastball, his slider, I mean, just wipeout slider, nasty stuff. So, you know, I mean, he does have some terrific stuff, but, you know, I mean, he probably needs to develop a little bit more. And, you know, I don't think they should rush him. I didn't think they should rush him last year. And, you know, when guys get rushed, things happen. You know, we saw Andrew Miller, who was a top pick of Dombrowski's, and he got rushed, and that didn't help him in his career. There was a guy named, was it Craig Hansen? For the Red Sox that got rushed, and he didn't, you know, benefit from that. So, you know, I mean, there's guys that, you know, that. So I think that Travis Likens is, and they've always been high, and they've always been high on Travis Likens, and they've liked his stuff, and they liked his stuff as a starter, and they thought he could thrive as a starter, and it just didn't happen as a starter because he's not big enough and durable enough. But as a reliever, I think he will thrive.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I think, you know, Feltman, like, he's phenomenal, but he's only been in single A. A lot of the guys, like, that I always worry about, long term he's going to be fine, but in the short term, he's never faced, like, anyone who's physically capable of touching his stuff, but in the majors, guys are physically capable of doing that, so there is the adjustment of, like, my stuff alone isn't good enough to get every single guy out. I need to kind of learn how to think a bit more, sort of thing. So I'd love to see him have, like, at least a month and a half in Double A, because they say the jump from Single A to Double A is about the hardest one you can do, aside from obviously going from the minors to the majors. So I'd love to see what he does there. Do you think Lakens starts the year on the opening day roster?
Yeah, it's possible. Just because, you know, I mean, he did pitch at AAA last year, and you saw a guy like, you know, Bobby Pointer, who never even pitched at AAA last year, make the roster. You saw Marcus Walden make the opening day roster last year. You know, so anything can happen in camp. If somebody impresses and they have a really good camp, they can make the opening day roster. He's on the 40-man now, so I mean, he could do it. Anything's a go. And if he comes in and he presses in camp, I wouldn't doubt it at all.
Yeah. So I'm hoping he makes it. I'm a big fan of his as well. I got one more minor league question for you before I turn it over to somebody else. And shifting away from the pitchers into the position players, the Red Sox have a bit of a logjam at the third base position. Obviously, they have Devers at third now. They seem set on, at least this year, trying to make it work at third. I, for one, think he has the skills to do it. Chaffetz is pretty close to being major league ready. There's talk about him maybe playing second base, working on that. He played first near the end of last year. Of course, you have Dalbec in in Double A. He's stayed at third, but there's talk of him maybe going to first also. And way down, you have Danny Diaz. So there's a ton of young talent at third base, but it's physically impossible for each one of those guys to make it up and basically stay with the Red Sox camp. Which one do you think is the most likely trade chip? Because it's hard for me, it's hard to see them keeping all four throughout 2019.
I think the most attractive trade chip right now would be somebody that they get the most for, and they have some good third basemen. I mean, just beyond those guys that you name, like there's a couple in the draft that they just drafted, like this Northcutt kid, and there's another kid that I'm blanking on his name, but there's a couple third basemen.
The one taken the one taken in the 23rd round. I'm blanking on the name too, but I know the guy. He was like the 600th pick, and he's already tearing up like rookie ball.
Yeah, so there's a couple of third basemen too, but yeah, I think that's the most attractive name. Is interesting. Isn't he a third baseman too, or am I wrong?
Oh yeah, I don't know how I missed him. Yeah, Cassis is obviously there.
Yeah. So they've got a ton of third basemen, and there's a lot of potential at the position. I am one that thinks Devers. You look at Benintendi's second year, and you look at a lot of these guys' second years, and even Jose Ramirez, just not a good player. His second year, even his third year, he wasn't that good. There's an adjustment period in the major leagues, but you look at Benintendi, and he was really good when he came up as a rookie halfway through the season, like Devers was. I mean, Devers was really good halfway through that season. And then Benintendi had, every other month he was good as his first full season. He was a very streaky player, and he had overall last year had a much better year. His OPS was in the 800s. He was just a much better player in his second full season. I think you'll see that with Devers. I think he showed those signs during the playoffs. I mean, he was a force in the playoffs. He had huge hits. He showed his potential. I think that he is. I've always felt like he is, a legit 30 home run power guy, and he's the third baseman of the future. Obviously, he needs to get a little bit better defensively, but that will come, and I think I saw improvements defensively with him. The biggest trade chip of, getting back to your actual question, the biggest trade chip I think at this point, or the person they could get the most for is Michael Chavis. I think that with Bobby Dahlbeck, he strikes out too much. And so he's got to prove it more at Double A and Triple A before people. I would think that teams would, really want to, until his value rises more. His strikeout rate is crazy, but his power is off the charts though too. So I mean, we'll see. But Chavis, I think even with the suspension that he had, the 80-game PED suspension, he came back from that and was just. He showed basically what he did the previous year, and I also have heard reports that his defense was much better after the PED suspension. When he came back last year, he was a much better defensive third baseman. Now, the thing with him going to second base, which is interesting, is that, you know, I mean, he started off as a shortstop out of high school. You know, in high school he was a shortstop, and he actually played some shortstop at the beginning of his minor league career. And if you can't play shortstop, and, you know, you're probably not going to be able to play second base. I mean, obviously shortstop's a more difficult position than second base, but it's still middle of the infield. But you can improve as a defensive player. So I was actually the one that asked Dombrowski about the second base thing, and he actually said that he's taking grounders at second base. And, you know, it is an option with Pedroia's health, and we just don't know about Pedroia's health, if he's going to be able to play a lot of games next year. And that's one spot you could get him in. Another spot you could get him in is in the outfield. You know, so there are other positions for Chavis, and first base is also an option, you know. And so he's going to have to earn time, though, because they obviously brought back Pierce, and so there's obviously that right-handed bat to platoon with Mitch Moreland at first. So, and, you know, as I said, Devers is going to be the everyday third baseman, so there's not going to be, so he's going to have to earn a spot. And, but yeah, I would think he's the most tradable at this point.
That is music to my ears, what you said about Devers. I'm probably his biggest fan in the entire world. I watched him back when he was in Portland. I used to go to the games on a very regular basis, and you know, when he made contact, it's a cliche, but it just sounded different. He just tore the cover off of it, and when he came up right in 2017 and like started being maybe the best bat on the 2017 Red Sox, that was just so great to watch. I think his future's as bright as anyone. I'm interested to see what they do with Chavis too. I think the fact that him and Moreland or that Pierce and Moreland are both up contract-wise at the end of the year, I think they might be grooming him towards first and second, sort of making him like souped up super utility guy that could start at either. I could see that happening. Dahlbeck is just so interesting to me because, like, to me, if everything breaks right, he's Aaron Judge, but I highly doubt everything's going to break right to that extent because, you know, he has such amazing power, like you said, but his strikeout rate's like usually in the mid-30s, which just cannot happen. If he ever learns to make consistent contact, sky's the limit with that kid, but by now he probably is what he is. I think Chavis, and this is me, but I think he's in the direct plans for the Red Sox future, especially with, we're going to need those prospects soon because everyone's about to get a lot more expensive. I wouldn't be surprised to see us trade Dahlbeck if he goes on, like, a really hot streak for, like, a month or so and just sell high on him right there. That's what I'd be looking for, I think.
Yeah. I mean, they're, as you said, they're deep at third base, so, you know, they have options, and, you know, and so they can afford to trade someone like that. I mean, it's like a situation with, Manuel Margot, you know, I mean, they were deep at that position, and so they could afford to trade him at the time. They were deep in outfield depth. So, I mean, they can afford to trade a third baseman.
That was awesome prospect coverage. Thanks for that. But I'm going to try to transition back to the MLB team. So I think you would agree, Chris, that the 2018 Boston Red Sox were a pretty good baseball team.
They were pretty good.
They were pretty good, yeah.
Let's not get too crazy with the takes, okay?
Yeah. Okay, that was a hot take. 108 wins, World Series champs. And they were multifaceted. They didn't just beat you on like one skill set. They were all around a great baseball team. But there was one position they were a little worse at. And when I say little, I mean lot. Red Sox catchers, they had the worst WAR, F-WAR, Fangraphs WAR, in the league by a considerable margin. They also had the worst WRC plus, OPS, any number. It doesn't look great. But they do have these intangibles that seem to kind of make up almost for this lack of conspicuous production. And I want to know, and I haven't heard anything on this front, but I don't know if you have, how do you, first of all, imagine the catching situation will shake out come spring training? And do you think the Red Sox should feel obligated to pursue a catcher?
So I think that they're going to go to a two-catcher. You know, I mean, they're just going to have two catchers on the roster in 2019. So either, you know, Leone or Schweihart will go this offseason, and I think it will be Leon who goes. I mean, I just, everybody talks about his catcher ERA and how the pitchers, rave about how well he, catches them and everything like that. But, yeah, and there is something to how well, comfort level with the pitcher. But, when your catcher ERA is really, just an irrelevant stat to me. Like, you can catch, he mainly caught Chris Sale, David Price and Rick Porcello, and Blake Swihart caught, Brian Johnson and, Hector Velasquez when he caught. So obviously, Sandy Leon's going to have a better catcher ERA. And, if Blake Swihart goes out and, catches, David Price on the day that David Price pitches against a team that David Price isn't good against, like the Yankees, or if a team is, or if he catches Chris Sale, when Chris Sale goes out and pitches against Indians who Chris Sale isn't good against, that has no effect. He has no effect on that. Against a different lineup, there's so much that goes into it. And so I think that you need some offense from the catcher position. And I think that the Christian Vasquez can become a better offensive player. I mean, we saw it in 2017. I think that some pressure got on him because of the contract last year, but I also think that, he gained weight. He didn't, he was out of shape a little bit last year. He gained weight during the season, and, I feel like he needs to get in better shape during this off season and, come in and, be more serious in a way in terms of his shape and physical, self. So, but I think he can provide, offense. But I think that, Blake Swihart has the most, the highest offensive ceiling, and I do think that he can catch. I know that Jason Varitek is a big supporter of Swihart. He's always had Dombrowski's ear, and that's one of the reasons that the Red Sox haven't traded Swihart yet, is because Jason Varitek has had Dombrowski's ear, going back a couple off seasons, saying this kid can be an all-star catcher. Don't trade him, or and that's true. And Varitek has worked closely with Swihart, and you could see the improvements that he made on balls in the dirt and things like that. And his caught stealing rate wasn't that good at the end of the year, but we saw a very good arm with Blake Swihart. Especially when you begin to catch more. So. If I was them, I would go Swihart and in Vasquez, and I would cut ties with Leon, try to trade him. Offensively, he's just giving them nothing, and and I think you need somebody that can give you some offense as a catcher.
Yeah.
I mean, because the WAR. I mean, he was in a negative WAR.
They all were.
Yeah, exactly.
Chris would basically do what I would do. Swihart and Vasquez. That's where I would go.
But I mean, you look at Swihart and once he started. I mean, he was in a negative WAR. A lot of people look at like his offensive stats and go, he can't hit either. But a lot of it was like, well, Cora only played him like once every 10 games for the first 40 games of the year, and he put him out against like he put him out against the other team's ace to give the better players rest. So like if you're not going to play every 10 games and then you're going to go in there and face I think he was in against that guy from Oakland who threw the no hitter against him. I mean, it was like I forget what that guy's name. Who threw the no hitter against him?
Sean Manaea.
Yeah. I was at the game and I can't even remember. But yeah, so it's like I think it was actually the second game that I don't think it was the no hitter, but I think it was the game at Fenway they threw against him. But anyway, you know what I mean. I mean those stats were kind of like like the offensive stats, when he actually played more every day from like June on, the offensive stats were pretty, a lot better. They were pretty much, they were pretty good. And he showed like during, his rookie year in 2015 when he was playing every day, I think he had the third best or the second best batting average, for catchers, in MLB catchers behind only Buster Posey. Buster only wishes that he could do that.
I think even with Blake Swihart, where he got really hot, I think it was like between June and July, and he started getting consistent playing time, is when Vasquez got injured. And then he also dealt with injury issues of his own between, I think, August and September, correct me if I'm wrong, and that kind of like curtailed some of the momentum that he had going. But
it allowed Ian Butler to get a World Series ring.
Exactly.
Oh my God, Ian Butler.
So everything works out.
Yeah, it all worked out. It's not that big of a deal, but Red Sox catchers compared to the rest of the team, it was kind of a big dichotomy.
So, other Chris, all of my burning Red Sox questions have been answered. But something I'm going to ask every single guest that comes on this podcast is, if you could change any one thing, specific or broader picture, whatever, about baseball, what would you change?
That's a good question. So I actually was talking to my friend earlier today. I was at the lunch with somebody. I was talking about this stuff, and I was like, I think that I don't like obviously the games are going too long, and that's driving that's making the younger people not like they or not watching the game, stuff like that. And you can't have 4-hour games. But I think that the thing that I don't like is that one of the reasons for that is because, sign stealing, one of the reasons is because they're, using 10 pitchers a game, but one of the reasons is they're, sign stealing, technology, using, technology in sign stealing, which we saw with the Houston Astros, and we even saw with the Red Sox last year with the iWatches or whatever the heck they're called, whatever. So, Apple Watch. So, I don't know.
Whatever these kids are using these days, right?
Exactly.
John Farrell's high-tech, secret agent weapons.
Yeah, so I think that, instead of delaying games or changing signs and being so focused on that, even, stealing signs in a way, I would probably have a headset between the catcher and the pitcher. And, I know that might sound stupid, but, the quarterback on an NFL team has a headset. And, I think it would be good for them to, have a headset so signs wouldn't be, you wouldn't steal signs. And I think that a pitch clock would be good, but the problem with the pitch clock is that, if it's like 30 seconds, I think the most somebody pitches, the most time, I think this year was 20 something, between pitches. So that's really not going to help. So it would have to be a 20-second pitch clock instead of a 30-second pitch clock, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be a 30-second pitch clock. So I would do a faster pitch clock than 30 seconds, and I would do the headset thing between the pitcher and the catcher just to eliminate technology from steal side.
I like the headset idea. That's definitely, it makes sense.
I've never heard that one, but it's really I like that idea.
We have the technology. It exists. Why can't we do this? That's all I got.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they confirm this for me. The quarterback does have one in the NFL, right? I'm not wrong about that.
Yes, he does.
Okay.
Yeah, he is a headset.
Yeah. So, the only thing, and I was saying this to my friend, I was like, maybe you'd have to talk quietly, obviously, so the batter doesn't hear you, because then the batter could relay the signs to the person at second base or whatever, or the batter would know. The batter would know then what you're doing, but you're throwing. But I think that you could do it in a way that the batter wouldn't hear. I don't know. So, or you could have your own language so that the batter wouldn't hear
either.
Just
have your own code words.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that would work.
Yeah. Along a similar breadth, you mentioned in the beginning of your answer that sometimes extra inning games, like I'm just thinking from your perspective, and I always think about this when I'm watching, when it goes like 15, 16, et cetera, innings. Like, what is the general mood as a beat reporter when it's like 2 a.m., 1 a.m., and you're still in the press box? Have you, like, ever fallen asleep or left early from the game just because it was so late?
No, I've never fallen asleep. I've never left early just because, I have to get a story up right immediately when the game ends.
Yeah.
So, you have to be there. But, I go to bed so late anyway during the season, because with the internet, working at masslife.com, it's different from a newspaper where they, get their stuff in on, they have a deadline and they're done for the night.
Yeah.
I'm usually up working anyway and trying to get more stories written and more stuff on the blog and stuff like that. So I'm up anyway, usually till 4 in the morning. And so it's not a huge deal with me because I'm usually a night owl, but it's not ideal. Let's just put it that way. You're pretty tired. And, it's not, you hope the games don't go that long.
Rooting for it to end any way possible. I hope your sleep schedule is getting better in the off season. Hopefully you've been able to rest a little bit, especially after that 18-inning World Series game.
That was a good, So I've been just basically, going on the schedule with my wife. She's a teacher, so it's basically the teacher schedule now. Go to bed early and wake up early. So.
Okay, good. Yeah. That works out then. Yeah. It's been adjusted. But yeah, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. You gave us some great answers. And Christopher Smith, Mass Live, thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me.
And that was Christopher Smith from Mass Live. Still want to thank him again for coming on the show. I think we got some really good content out of that, guys. He gave so much detail on his answer, and that was wonderful because you really do get a lot of original insight into the interworkings of this team from not only the surface major league stuff, but even below it. Dave, you got some good questions, and they got some good banter with him about that. So that was great. But yeah, you can follow this podcast or you can listen to this podcast on a variety of outlets. We have a variety. We're on SoundCloud, obviously. We're on iTunes. If our affiliates at the Grueling Truth Network are so kind, they will post this on iHeartRadio, on Spotify, on YouTube, on Stitcher, among other podcast platforms. We'll be back next week. We don't have who may be getting another interview. Who knows? Regardless, we'll be back next week talking Boston Red Sox. Thank you guys for listening to this special episode of the Red Sox Unfiltered Podcast. See you guys next week.
We really need to just do like a blooper reel.
I'm gonna create a blooper section.
Now being recorded.
There she is. She's like music to my ears.
So yeah, anyway, this is my social security number, and I'll let you guys know my credit card once I find my wallet.
Socks kid? Socks? Socks kid? Kid?
Who's
yeah.
Socks kid? What are you
Socks?
referencing?
Socks?
Are you talking
what
to
are you?
Socks. Hi, everyone.
Are you having a seizure?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Should we start over, or should we...
Let's keep going.